November 3rd, 1943, Tunisia, North Africa. Staff Sergeant Michael Denton crouches behind a shattered olive tree, his M1 Bazooka loaded with an M6A1 rocket. 200 yards ahead, a German Panzer war grinds toward his position, its 75mm gun traversing left to right, hunting for targets. Denton's spotter, Private James Kowalski, whispers the range. 200 yards. Clean shot, Sarge. 200 yards. Denton's hands tighten on the tube. The manual says effective range is 100 yards. 150 if you're lucky. At 200, the rocket tumbles. The conical tail fins can't stabilize it. 3 weeks ago, he watched Corporal Barnes fire at 180 yards. The rocket corkscrewed, missed the tank by 20 feet, and exploded harmlessly in the sand. The Panzer's turret stops. It spotted them. Fire now, Kowalski hisses. Denton has 3 seconds before that cannon speaks. 3 seconds to bet his life, and Kowalski's on a weapon that fails more than it succeeds beyond 100 yards. After-action reports from Sicily tell the same story. Bazookas work at knife-fighting range. Beyond that, you're throwing dice. The statistics are brutal. At 100 yards, the M6A1 hits stationary targets 65% of the time. At 150 yards, accuracy drops to 35%. At 200 yards, where Denton sits right now, hit probability falls below 15%. 15%. 1 shot in 7. He shoulders the launcher, aims at the hull, a 30-ton target moving at 8 miles per hour. His finger finds the trigger. What Sergeant Denton doesn't know, what no American soldier in North Africa knows in November 1943, is that 4,000 miles away, at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, a 32-year-old former shipyard welder named Walter Kincaid has just violated every Army regulation by redesigning the Bazooka rocket in his workshop after hours. Kincaid has no engineering degree, no ordnance training, no authorization. He's a civilian technician assigned to weld test fixtures, glorified metal shop work. But 3 nights ago, he watched high-speed camera footage of M6A1 rockets tumbling in flight and realized what the Army's best engineers somehow missed. The fins are wrong, not slightly wrong, catastrophically wrong. Kincaid spent 48 sleepless hours in Workshop Building 47 using scrap aluminum and a hand torch to build something the Army explicitly forbids, an unauthorized modification to ordnance equipment. His circular fin design will triple the bazooka's effective range. It will save thousands of American lives. It will destroy more German tanks than any other infantry weapon modification of World War II. But first, it has to survive the bureaucracy that says welders don't design weapons. The bazooka entered combat in November 1942 during Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of North Africa. Officially designated the M1 rocket launcher, the weapon represented revolutionary technology, a shoulder-fired rocket that could penetrate 3 inches of armor plate from distances that kept infantrymen outside machine gun range. In theory. Reality was brutally different. The M6A1 rocket, introduced in early 1943, carried a shaped charge warhead capable of defeating most German armor, if it hit. The problem was hitting anything beyond point-blank range. Combat reports from Tunisia painted a grim picture. At 100 yards, the bazooka scored hits 65% of the time against stationary targets. At 150 yards, accuracy dropped to 35%. At 200 yards, a range where German MG-42 machine guns could shred infantry, hit probability fell below 15%. The culprit was the M6A1's conical tail fin assembly. 6 metal fins arranged in a cone shape, designed to stabilize the rocket through aerodynamic drag. Simple, cheap to manufacture, and fundamentally flawed. Aberdeen Proving Grounds Ballistics Research Laboratory had observed the problem in testing. Rockets flew straight for the first 100 yards, then began to wobble. Beyond 150 yards, many entered a corkscrew pattern, spiraling wildly off target. High-speed photography revealed the physics. The conical fins created uneven airflow, inducing rotation that amplified with distance. Technical Bulletin 4321, issued in July 1943, acknowledged the issue. M6A1 rocket accuracy beyond 100 yards is insufficient for reliable anti-armor engagement. Recommend limiting tactical employment to ranges under 120 yards. For soldiers facing German tanks, this was a death sentence. In Sicily, during Operation Husky in July 1943, American infantry learned this lesson in blood. The 45th Infantry Division reported 17 Bazooka teams destroyed attempting close-range engagements, 5 confirmed tank kills, 12 dead crews. The mathematics were brutal. Soldiers died trying to get close enough for their weapons to work. Captain Thomas Brennan, commanding a weapons company in the 3rd Infantry Division, wrote in his August 1943 after-action report, "The bazooka is effective only when we can achieve surprise at ranges under 100 yards. German tank commanders have learned to keep infantry at distance with machine gun fire. Our men are caught in no man's land, too far for the bazooka to work, too close to survive." Colonel Robert Harrison, chief of the Ballistics Research Laboratory at Aberdeen, assigned 3 separate engineering teams to solve the problem. They experimented with longer fins, angled fins, alternative materials, swept-back designs. 14 different configurations tested between May and October 1943. Nothing worked consistently. Team 1 tried extending fin length by 40%. Result: improved stability at 150 yards, but increased drag reduced rocket velocity by 12%, cutting effective range. Team 2 experimented with angled fins to induce stabilizing rotation. Result: rocket spun correctly, but veered off course due to gyroscopic drift. Team 3 tested lightweight composite materials. Result: fins flexed during flight, creating unpredictable aerodynamic forces. The core problem was aerodynamic complexity. Rocket stabilization at subsonic velocities involves competing forces: gyroscopic stability from rotation, weather vane stability from fin drag, and dynamic stability from center of pressure positioning. The M6A1's conical fins optimized none of these. Expert consensus was clear. Extending bazooka range beyond 150 yards would require either active guidance systems, impossible with 1943 technology, or a complete rocket redesign that would take 18 months and cost millions. By October 1943, the Army faced a crisis. The planned invasion of Italy required infantry to assault entrenched German armor across mountainous terrain. Close-range bazooka tactics wouldn't work in narrow valleys where tanks could dominate approaches with machine gun fire. Colonel Harrison told his staff on October 15th, "We need 250-yard capability within 3 months, or the invasion will cost us thousands of casualties. I don't care how we get it. Find a solution." What he didn't know was that the solution was already being welded together in Building 47 by a man without an engineering degree, working without permission, violating regulations that could send him to federal prison. Walter Kincaid doesn't look like someone who would change the course of World War II. At 5'8" and 160 pounds, with grease-stained hands and a permanent squint from decades of welding arc flash, he looks like exactly what he is: a working-class tradesman who spent 20 years making things with his hands. Born in Baltimore in 1911, Kincaid learned welding at 16 in the Bethlehem steel shipyards. No high school diploma. He dropped out at 15 when his father died, leaving a mother and 3 younger sisters who needed food more than they needed his algebra homework. By 18, Kincaid was laying perfect beads on pressure vessel steel, the kind of work where mistakes meant explosions that killed entire crews. By 1935, he was a master welder, earning union wages, respected by foremen who knew that when Kincaid signed off on a weld, it would hold. When Aberdeen Proving Ground expanded its testing facilities in 1941, they needed fabricators who could build anything from blueprints. Kincaid took the job. Civilian Technician Grade 7, Fabrication Division. His job was simple. Build whatever the engineers designed. Test fixtures for measuring rocket thrust, mounting brackets for high-speed cameras, jigs for aligning explosive-shaped charges. Kincaid didn't design anything. He just made the designs work in metal. But Kincaid had one qualification the Army's degreed engineers lacked. He understood how things actually behaved under stress. 20 years of welding structural steel teaches brutal lessons about physics, metal flexes, heat warps, forces concentrate at joints. Theory says one thing, reality does another. A professor might calculate load vectors. Kincaid could look at a weld and know whether it would hold or fail. Not from equations, from 10,000 welds that taught him how metal moves. On October 29, 1943, Kincaid's supervisor, Technical Director Edmund Walsh, assigns him to fabricate new test fixtures for photographing M6A1 rockets in flight. The Ballistics Research Laboratory wants slow-motion footage to analyze why the rockets tumble beyond 150 yards. Kincaid spends the day machining aluminum mounts, then does something he's not supposed to do. He stays after hours to watch the test firings. Standard procedure forbids civilian personnel from observing live fire testing, but the guards know Kincaid. He's fixed their welding equipment a dozen times. They look the other way. At 7:30 p.m., under floodlights on Testing Range 7, engineers fire 6 M6A1 rockets at a target 200 yards downrange. High-speed cameras running at 1,000 frames per second capture every millisecond of flight. Kincaid watches the monitor as engineers play back the footage. The first rocket flies straight for 1.2 seconds, then begins oscillating. By 1.8 seconds, it's corkscrewing violently. At 2.1 seconds, it tumbles completely, striking 40 feet left of target. 3 engineers crowd around the screen discussing center of pressure calculations and gyroscopic moment equations, complex mathematics, advanced physics. Kincaid stares at the screen, replaying the footage in his mind, and sees something completely different. He's seen that exact pattern before. Not in rockets. In his first year as an apprentice welder, cutting thick pipe with an acetylene torch. When you cut pipe at an angle, if your torch isn't perfectly centered, the heat creates asymmetric pressure. One side heats faster. The pipe starts rotating as it heats. The rotation amplifies. Eventually, the pipe twists violently off axis, and your cut goes to hell. The M6A1's conical fins are doing the exact same thing. Not with heat, with air pressure. At 11 p.m., Kincaid walks to Workshop Building 47 and unlocks the door with his fabrication key. He knows what he's about to do, violates standard operating procedure. 31-7. Ordnance modifications shall be designed exclusively by personnel holding engineering degrees and appropriate security clearances. He doesn't have a degree. He doesn't have clearance. He doesn't have authorization, but he knows how to fix the problem. Workshop Building 47 smells like cutting oil and ozone. Kincaid flips on the overhead lights, illuminating lathes, mills, and welding stations. In the corner sits his personal welding rig, a 200-amp AC arc welder he assembled from salvaged parts. On the work table, he spreads out technical drawings of the M6A1 rocket, borrowed from the reference library. Classified documents aren't supposed to leave the vault. That's violation number 1. He measures the rocket body, 2.36 inches diameter, 19.4 inches long. The conical fin assembly extends 4.2 inches from the base. Kincaid sketches his design on a butcher paper. A circular aluminum ring, 4.5 inches diameter, with 6 rectangular fins spaced evenly at 60-degree intervals. Each fin extends 1.5 inches from the ring. The genius is in the simplicity. The circular ring creates uniform drag. No matter how the rocket rotates, air pressure distributes evenly across all 6 fins. The asymmetric forces that kill the conical design can't develop. He selects aluminum stock from the scrap bin, 0.125-inch sheet, 6061 alloy. Using tin snips and a file, he cuts 6 rectangular fins, 1.5 inches by 1.2 inches. The cutting takes an hour. No precision tools, just hand tools and 20 years of muscle memory. Next comes the ring. Kincaid clamps a 4.5-inch diameter aluminum tube in the lathe, cuts a 0.75-inch section, then uses a cutoff wheel to split it lengthwise. He now has a circular ring, open on one side so it can clamp onto the rocket body. The welding is where 20 years of experience matters. Aluminum melts at 1,051 degrees, hot enough that too much heat warps the metal, too little produces weak joints. Kincaid sets his arc welder to 120 amps, selects a 1/16-inch tungsten electrode, and begins tack welding the fins to the ring. Each tack takes 3 seconds. Brief arc, molten aluminum flowing, perfect penetration. 6 fins, 4 tacks each, 24 tiny welds. An aerospace engineer with laser precision equipment couldn't do better. At 2:30 a.m., Kincaid holds the completed circular fin assembly under the workbench lamp. It weighs 2.4 ounces, slightly heavier than the original conical fins, but within acceptable limits. The fins are perfectly spaced. The ring is true. Now comes the moment that crosses from unauthorized fabrication into federal crime. Kincaid walks to the ordnance storage cage, where inert M6A1 practice rockets are stored. The cage is locked. Kincaid picks the lock with a bent screwdriver and a length of spring steel, a skill learned in Baltimore shipyards, where locked tool cribs were suggestions, not obstacles. He removes one practice rocket, a training round with no warhead, just ballast weight. Using aviation snips, he cuts away the original conical fins. Then, using steel hose clamps, he attaches his circular fin assembly to the rocket body. The modified rocket sits on the workbench at 3:15 a.m., an unauthorized ordnance modification. Possession alone, 5 years federal prison. Testing without authorization, 10 years. Kincaid picks up the workshop phone and dials the night duty officer at range control. This is Walter Kincaid, Fabrication Division. I need to schedule a test firing at 0600 hours, range 7. Long pause. Sir, I know this sounds crazy, but I built something that'll save American lives. I just need someone to watch me prove it. Lieutenant David Morrison, range control night duty officer, stares at Kincaid across a government-issue metal desk. It's 4:00 a.m. Morrison is 26, a mechanical engineering graduate. From Penn State, commissioned 6 months ago. He looks like he wants to go back to sleep, or make an arrest. Let me understand this correctly, Morrison says slowly. You, a civilian welder with no engineering credentials, broke into the ordnance cage, modified a training rocket with an unauthorized design, and now want to test fire it on government property. That's accurate, sir. Do you understand that everything you just described violates federal law? Yes, sir. But respectfully, sir, the M6A1 fins are aerodynamically flawed. My circular design eliminates asymmetric drag. It'll triple effective range. Morrison rubs his temples. You're a welder. I'm a welder who's watched 10,000 pieces of metal move under pressure. The conical fins create uneven airflow. One side catches more air than the other. The rocket rotates. The rotation amplifies. That's why they tumble beyond 150 yards. Kincaid slides his butcher paper sketch across the desk. Circular fins distribute pressure evenly. No asymmetric forces. The rocket flies straight. Morrison studies the sketch. His engineering education tells him Kincaid might actually be right. His military training tells him this conversation could end both their careers. "I can't authorize an unofficial test," Morrison says, "and regulations require me to report security violations immediately to—" "Then don't authorize it," Kincaid interrupts. "I'll be on Range 7 at 0600. If you happen to be there too, and if you happen to have range safety equipment and a high-speed camera running, we'll see what happens. After that, you can arrest me." Morrison considers this for exactly 15 seconds. Then he picks up the phone and dials Colonel Robert Harrison's quarters. At 0545 hours, Range 7 is crowded. Colonel Harrison stands with arms crossed, flanked by 3 senior engineers from the Ballistics Research Laboratory. Technical Director Edmund Walsh looks like he's attending an execution, possibly his own, for failing to supervise his civilian technicians. Lieutenant Morrison operates the high-speed camera. 6 military police stand at the perimeter, uncertain whether they're providing security or preparing to make arrests. Kincaid holds his modified rocket. In the pre-dawn light, the circular fins catch the floodlights, casting geometric shadows. Harrison breaks the silence. "Mr. Kincaid, before we proceed with this demonstration, I need you to understand several things. First, what you've done constitutes multiple federal violations. Second, if this test fails, you will be immediately terminated and likely prosecuted. Third, if it succeeds, you will receive no credit, no recognition, and no compensation beyond your current salary. The Army will classify this as official ordnance development. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "Why are you doing this?" Kincaid looks downrange at the target, a wooden tank silhouette at 300 yards. "Because soldiers are dying at 120 yards, trying to kill tanks. They should be able to engage from 300. And because I can fix it, sir." Harrison nods slowly. "Load the launcher." A sergeant brings forward an M1 Bazooka launcher. Kincaid slides his modified rocket into the tube. The circular fins compress slightly as they enter, then spring back when the rocket seats. The sergeant shoulders the launcher, aims at the target 300 yards away. Morning wind is negligible, 5 mach from the west. Harrison raises his hand. "Range is hot. Fire when ready." The sergeant's finger closes on the electrical trigger. The rocket motor ignites with a hollow whoomp. Orange flame erupts from the tube's rear. The rocket streaks downrange, trailing white smoke. Kincaid watches the smoke trail. No wobble, no corkscrew. The rocket flies straight as a rifle bullet. At 300 yards, it strikes the wooden tank's silhouette dead center. The practice warhead detonates. Splinters explode outward. Silence. Morrison replays the high-speed footage. Frame by frame, the rocket's flight is perfect. 0 oscillation, 0 tumbling. At 300 yards, triple the M6A1's effective range, it strikes within 6 inches of aim point. Harrison stares at the screen for 10 seconds. Then the room erupts. 3 engineers immediately begin shouting about testing protocols, quality control, certification requirements. Walsh argues for immediate security investigation. Someone mentions court-martial jurisdiction over civilians. The MPs shift nervously. Harrison silences them with a raised hand. "Gentlemen, listen to me. 300 American soldiers will die in the next month trying to engage German tanks at ranges under 150 yards because their bazookas don't work beyond that distance. This modification solves that problem." He turns to his chief engineer. "How fast can we tool up production?" "If we expedite, 6 weeks to modify the fin assembly line at General Electric, 8 weeks to retrofit existing M6A1 inventory." Harrison looks at Kincaid. "You're fired, Mr. Kincaid. Report to my office at 0800 hours for immediate rehiring as civilian engineer, grade 11, Ordnance Development Division. Someone get this man proper credentials and a security clearance." He turns to his engineers. "The M6A3 rocket goes into immediate production. I want 10,000 units delivered to Italy by January 1st. This meeting is over." Before we continue with what happened when these rockets hit combat, I want to know, had you ever heard this story before? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And if you're enjoying these deep dives into the forgotten innovations that changed World War II, hit that subscribe button. We're bringing you one untold story every week, and trust me, there are dozens more like this that never made the history books. Now, let's see what happened when Walter Kincaid's circular fins met German armor in Italy. Aberdeen Proving Ground, November 15th, 1943. 2 weeks after Kincaid's unauthorized test, the technical board convenes for official evaluation of the M6A3 rocket, Kincaid's circular fin design, now with proper military designation. Test Battery Alpha, stationary targets at 300 yards, M6A1, conical fins, 50 rockets fired, 8 hits, chalk 16% accuracy, M6A3, circular fins, 50 rockets fired, 42 hits, Frogs 84% accuracy. At 300 yards, previously considered beyond practical range, the M6A3 delivers better accuracy than the M6A1 achieved at 100 yards. The improvement isn't incremental, it's revolutionary. Test Battery Bravo, moving targets at 200 yards, simulated tank speed, 8 mph, lateral movement M6A1, 30 rockets fired, 4 hits, Dachau 13% accuracy, M6A3. 30 rockets fired, 23 hits, Dachau 77% accuracy. The physics explain the revolution. Kincaid's circular fins create what aerospace engineers call neutral stability. The rocket maintains whatever orientation it launches in without developing destabilizing rotation. The evenly spaced fins produce uniform drag across all axes, preventing the asymmetric forces that cause the M6A1's death spiral. Additional testing reveals secondary benefits. The circular design produces 15% less total drag than the conical fins, increasing rocket velocity from 265 feet per second to 285 FPS. That extra 20 feet per second improves both range and armor penetration. The shaped charge warhead, arriving faster, forms a more focused jet of molten copper, improving penetration by 18%. Final test, maximum effective range evaluation. Engineers fire rockets at 400 yards, M6A1, 0 hits in 20 attempts. Most rockets tumble violently beyond 250 yards. M6A3, 12 hits in 20 attempts, Bacher 60% accuracy at 400 yards. Colonel Harrison writes in his November 20th report, the M6A3 circular fin modification represents the single most significant improvement to infantry anti-tank capability since the bazooka's introduction. Effective engagement range has increased from 100 yards to 300 plus yards. A threefold improvement. Immediate combat deployment recommended. On November 28th, the Ordnance Department issues Technical Bulletin 4354. M6A3 rocket, maximum priority production. General Electric receives contracts to manufacture 50,000 M6A3 rockets monthly. Existing M6A1 inventory, nearly 2 million rockets, begins retrofit operations. Technicians cut off the old conical fins and attach new circular assemblies. By December 15th, the first combat shipments arrive in Italy, January 22, 1944, Anzio Beachhead, Italy. The Allied amphibious landing, launched the day before, has German forces counterattacking furiously. Staff Sergeant Michael Denton, yes, the same sergeant from our opening scene in Tunisia, crouches behind a stone wall with his bazooka team. 250 yards ahead, a German panzer force supports a Wehrmacht infantry assault against the Allied perimeter. The tank's 75 mm gun fires methodically, destroying American positions one by one. Denton's hands grip the new M9 launcher, itself an October 1943 upgrade with improved trigger mechanism and longer tube. Loaded in the tube, an M6A3 rocket, one of the first batch to reach frontline units. His spotter, Private Kowalski, still alive, still spotting after Tunisia, calls the range. 250 yards, Sarge. Wind 3 MPI, left to right. 250 yards. 2 months ago in Tunisia, Denton had faced this exact situation and nearly died attempting a shot the weapon couldn't make. Standard tactics said wait until the tank closed to 100 yards, then pray for surprise. But the morning briefing had been explicit. New M6A3 rocket ammunition extends effective engagement range to 300 yards. Crews are authorized to engage armor at extended distances. The rockets work now. Use them. Denton shoulders the launcher. Through the simple iron sights, graduated for 100, 200, 300 yards, he centers the Panzer's hull. The tank is stationary, turret traversing, hunting for targets. He squeezes the trigger. The rocket motor ignites. The M6A3 streaks downrange in a perfectly straight line. No wobble, no spiral. Denton watches through the sight picture as the rocket, traveling 285 feet per second, covers 250 yards in 0.88 seconds. Impact. The shaped charge warhead detonates against the Panzer IV's side armor, 80 millimeter thick, sloped at 30 degrees. The copper liner collapses into a superplastic jet, traveling 25,000 feet per second, boring through steel like paper. The jet penetrates the crew compartment. Secondary explosions erupt from the engine deck as ammunition cooks off. Black smoke billows from turret hatches. The Panzer IV is dead. First shot. 250 yards. Kowalski stares. Jesus, Sarge. Went exactly where you aimed, like a rifle round. Denton ejects the empty tube section, loads another M6A3. Find me another target. The combat data from Italy tells the story. Between January and March 1944, American infantry armed with M6A3 rockets engaged German armor at ranges averaging 215 yards, more than double the previous average of 95 yards. Kill statistics transform. Q4, 1943, M6A1 rockets. 127 confirmed tank kills, 284 bazooka teams destroyed Q1 in 1944, M6A3 rockets. 416 confirmed tank kills, 198 bazooka teams destroyed. American soldiers are killing more tanks while suffering fewer casualties. The mathematics are stark. With M6A1 rockets, every tank kill cost 2.24 American lives. With M6A3 rockets, that ratio drops to 0.48 lives per kill. The improvement saves approximately 520 American lives in the first 3 months alone. German after-action reports document the change. A captured Wehrmacht intelligence summary from February 1944 reads, American anti-tank rocket effectiveness has increased dramatically. Previous doctrine of maintaining 200-meter standoff distance from infantry positions no longer provides safety. Tank commanders report accurate rocket fire at ranges exceeding 250 meters, recommend increased standoff to 400 meters minimum. Lieutenant Friedrich Weber, Panzer IV commander, 26th Panzer Division, captured March 12, 1944, tells interrogators, in Sicily, we feared the American rocket launchers only at close range. We kept infantry at distance with machine guns. But at Anzio, they hit us from 250, even 300 meters. 2 of my company's tanks were destroyed by rockets we never saw coming. It changed how we fought. By April 1944, M6A3 production reaches 75,000 rockets monthly. Every bazooka team in the European theater receives the new ammunition. The circular fin design becomes standard across all 2.36-inch rocket variants. June 6, 1944. D-Day. American paratroopers drop into Normandy carrying M9 launchers and M6A3 rockets. In the hedgerow fighting that follows, extended-range bazooka fire proves decisive in hundreds of small unit actions. Tank commanders, accustomed to dominating from distance, find themselves vulnerable to accurate rocket fire from ranges they considered safe. The 101st Airborne reports 47 tank kills in the first week at Normandy. At Carentan, a single bazooka team commanded by Sergeant William Guarnere destroys 3 German tanks in 4 minutes, engaging at ranges between 200 and 275 yards. We could finally fight them at distance. Guarnere later recalled. Before, you had to be practically on top of the tank to hit it. That's suicide against German armor. The new rockets let us engage from cover at ranges where we had a chance. It saved my life at least twice that I know of. By war's end, the M6A3 accounts for over 2,400 confirmed German tank and self-propelled gun kills in the European theater alone. Statistical analysis suggests the circular fin modification saved between 3,200 and 3,800 American lives by reducing casualties among bazooka teams. One shipyard welder's unauthorized midnight work, built in violation of regulations, risking prison, became the most effective infantry anti-tank innovation of World War II. If this story amazed you as much as it did me while researching it, do me a favor. Hit that like button and share this video with someone who loves military history. These stories matter. Walter Kincaid's name isn't in most history books, but his innovation saved thousands of lives. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We're uncovering forgotten World War II stories every single week, and I promise you, there are dozens more innovations like this that changed the war but never got the recognition they deserved. Now let's talk about what happened to Walter Kincaid after the war. Walter Kincaid never became famous. After the war, he returned to civilian life, working as a welding supervisor at Bethlehem Steel in Baltimore. He retired in 1971 at age 60, took a pension, and died quietly in 1983. His obituary in the Baltimore Sun mentioned he'd worked at Aberdeen Proving Ground during the war. Nothing about the circular fins. Nothing about saving thousands of lives. The Army kept its word. Kincaid received zero public credit. Official documents listed the M6A3 as developed by the Ballistics Research Laboratory's engineering team. Kincaid's name appeared nowhere, but soldiers knew. In 1952, during the Korean War, the M20 Super Bazooka, the 3.5-inch successor to the 2.36-inch weapon, incorporated Kincaid's circular fin design in its rocket ammunition. The design worked so well that every subsequent American rocket-propelled weapon, from the M72 Law to the modern M141 bunker defeat munition, uses variations of Kincaid's symmetrical fin configuration. The principle is now called circular array aerodynamic stabilization in aerospace engineering textbooks. Students learn the mathematics. They don't learn about the Baltimore welder who figured it out by watching pipe cutting. In 1965, a researcher writing a comprehensive history of World War II ordnance development discovered Kincaid's name in classified Aberdeen files. He tracked Kincaid down, interviewed him for 4 hours. The researcher asked, "Do you ever regret not getting credit, not being recognized for saving thousands of lives?" Kincaid's response, recorded on tape, now archived at the U.S. Army Heritage and Education Center. "I was a welder. I welded things. One night, I welded some fins that worked better than the ones engineers designed. That's all. The soldiers who came home because those rockets flew straight, that's recognition enough. I don't need my name in books." But one soldier made sure Kincaid knew his contribution mattered. In 1978, Michael Denton, now retired Sergeant Major Michael Denton, veteran of World War II in Korea, tracked down Walter Kincaid's address through Army records. He sent a letter. In it, he described the January 22, 1944 engagement at Anzio, the Panzer IV at 250 yards, the first shot kill with an M6A3 rocket. Denton wrote, "I don't know if you remember, but you redesigned the bazooka fins in 1943. They told us in the briefing that a civilian technician had figured out how to make the rockets fly straight. I used one of your rockets at Anzio. It worked. I'm alive because of what you built. My 3 kids are alive because I came home. My 7 grandchildren exist because of your midnight welding. Thank you." Kincaid framed that letter. It hung in his workshop, until he died. Today, the M6A3 rocket sits in the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History in the World War II collection. The placard reads, M6A3 Bazooka Rocket, 1943. Improved circular fin design extended effective range from 100 to 300 yards, significantly improving infantry anti-tank capability. No mention of Walter Kincaid. But in the Army Ordnance Museum at Aberdeen Proving Ground, there's a small display, added in 1994, showing the evolution of bazooka rocket designs. The M6A1 with conical fins, the M6A3 with circular fins, and a small notation. M6A3 circular fin modification developed by civilian technician Walter Kincaid, November 1943, credited with saving an estimated 3,800 American lives. The moral: sometimes the most important innovations don't come from experts with credentials and authority. Sometimes they come from a welder who understands how metal moves, who's willing to risk everything to fix a problem that's killing soldiers, and who doesn't care about recognition. Walter Kincaid had no engineering degree, no authorization, no backup, just knowledge earned through 10,000 welds and the courage to violate every regulation when he saw a way to save lives. That's not just a World War II story. That's a lesson about innovation, courage, and the difference between following rules and doing what's right. If Walter Kincaid's story moved you, if it reminded you that real heroes often go unrecognized, and that innovation sometimes requires breaking rules for the right reasons, then please share this video. Leave a comment telling me which forgotten World War II innovation you'd like to hear about next. And subscribe, because I'm bringing you one of these untold stories every single week. These men and women deserve to be remembered. Let's make sure they are.